Hi, I'm Maura. My sister handed me a cake that mocked my pregnancy, and then she threw my baby into a fountain. Sounds unreal, right? But the worst part wasn't that moment. It was everything that led up to it. The silence, the fake smiles, the way my family made me feel like a guest in my own motherhood. How does a family get there? Have you ever been excluded by your own blood? Made to feel like you were too much? Or not enough? What time are you watching this? And where in the world are you listening from? Drop it in the comments, I'd love to know. I had barely stepped through the white trellis gate when the humidity wrapped around my skin like guilt. The garden looked like a Pinterest board. Soft blush ribbons fluttering on each chair, fake roses that somehow cost more than real ones, and champagne flutes lined up like glass soldiers waiting for battle. It was exactly the kind of event my mother loved. Carefully arranged, meticulously curated, absolutely hollow. Avery squirmed in my arms. I bounced her gently, whispered nothing words into her hair. My heels sank into the manicured lawn as I scanned for a familiar face. Taryn was already in the center of everything, laughing into a glass, her lips painted the same pale pink as the tablecloths. She wore motherhood like a costume, one she could take off the moment no one was watching. Someone offered to take Avery. I declined with a tight smile. I could feel my heart thudding behind my ribs, not from excitement, but from the way old wounds throb in the presence of the people who caused them. I didn't expect an apology, but a nod, a look, some sign that they saw me. I was wrong. The announcement came with the clink of a fork against a champagne glass. "Time for the cake!" Taryn chirped. The guests circled around the dessert table, phones up, fake smiles ready. Taryn pulled off the lid with the flair of someone revealing a diamond ring. Across pale fondant and piped rosettes, the words curled like a slap. "Oops, baby, but she's cute anyway." For a second, no one reacted. Then laughter rippled through the crowd, starting like a cough and spreading like fire. My mother chuckled, wine in hand, dabbing at her eyes like the cake was the funniest thing she'd seen in years. I didn't laugh. Avery shifted in my arms again, little hand pressed against my collarbone. I stared at the frosting, at the neat swirl of letters. My mouth was dry, my knees were locked, my body a cage that wouldn't move. I looked up and caught Taryn's eye. She smiled. She walked over slowly, deliberately, heels silent against the grass. "You know," she said under her breath, "if you won't teach her discipline, I will." I blinked. Her hand shot out. She snatched Avery from my arms before I could register it. There was a collective gasp, like air had been vacuumed from the space. "Taryn," I started, too late. She took 2 steps back, and then, without a word, she turned and hurled my daughter into the fountain. The sound of water breaking was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Someone screamed. I don't think it was me. I couldn't move. My legs were ice. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Colton was already running. He dove in fully clothed, arms slicing through the water. Seconds later, he surfaced, Avery cradled to his chest, coughing but safe. Her cries were sharp and real, proof she was still breathing. The crowd froze. Taryn stood at the edge, unmoved. She smoothed her dress, shook off a droplet that had landed on her wrist. "It was just a test," she said, loud enough for people to hear. "Relax." No one laughed this time. I walked forward, took Avery from Colton's arms. She clung to me, soaking, shivering, angry and confused. My heart hadn't restarted, not fully. I didn't speak, I didn't scream, I just turned and walked toward the front gate. No one followed, no one stopped me. In the car, I strapped Avery into her seat with hands that weren't shaking anymore. I looked at her. Her eyes were wide, her mouth trembling. She looked exactly how I felt. I adjusted the mirror, caught my own reflection. "They wanted to see if I'd leave," I whispered. I started the engine. Now they'll see what happens when I do. The road home was darker than I remembered, or maybe that was just me. Avery had fallen asleep somewhere past the old oak-lined stretch before the interstate, her tiny chest rising and falling beneath the soft knit blanket my aunt had made. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't need the distraction. My thoughts were louder than music anyway. Images from the party spun in my mind, not the chaos at the end, but the quieter things. The kinds of cruelties that hide behind pastel bows and champagne flutes. Like the slideshow. They had rented a screen and everything. projected it against the back fence like it was a drive-in movie. Soft piano music, slow fades between family vacations, graduations, birthdays. Everyone clapped, laughed, teared up, but none of it was me. Not one photo of my wedding, not one of Avery's first breath, not even the forced group shot from last Thanksgiving, where I was literally the one holding the camera. At first I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the USB I had given Mom didn't work. But then I saw it. A photo of Taryn, wearing the same dress I had on that Thanksgiving, except cropped tighter, centered, as if I had never been standing next to her. It wasn't an accident, it was editing. One guest leaned in and said, "Taryn has such a good eye. These look like magazine ads." I smiled, because that's what you do when you realize you've been cut out of your own family movie. After everyone clapped, I found the woman running the slideshow, Mrs. Lyle, a family friend since middle school. I tapped her shoulder gently, careful not to sound like I was accusing anyone of anything. I just wanted to ask. I noticed there weren't any recent photos of me or of Avery. She gave a small, startled smile. "Oh, honey, I thought you didn't want any attention. Taryn said you hadn't sent anything usable, that maybe you were keeping things private." I thanked her. I nodded. I walked away without blinking. She didn't just delete me. She rewrote the story so it looked like I deleted myself. In the kitchen, someone popped a bottle of Prosecco. Outside, I held Avery against my shoulder and watched the projection fade to black. Back home, I carried her in without turning on the lights. I placed her gently in the crib, kissed her forehead, then opened the drawer next to my desk. There, tucked between expired coupons and old receipts, was the USB drive I had given my mother last Christmas, still sealed in its glittery envelope, unopened. I held it in my hand for a long time, then plugged it into my laptop. All the photos were there. Avery's first smile, her first steps, my favorite one, her asleep on my chest, mouth slightly open, one sock missing. I stared at that photo, not because it was perfect, but because it was proof. Proof that I had offered them something real, and they chose a version that erased us instead. I shut the laptop. If they wanted to forget me, fine, but they don't get to forget her. I hadn't expected anyone to reach out after the party, but I still checked, over and over again. The group chat was dead. No updates, no awkward justifications, no faux apologies. Just silence. Like nothing had happened. Like I had simply vanished along with the streamers. But Taryn? She was active. Polished photos of the party flooded her feed. Perfect lighting, filtered blush tones, smiling faces. One shot had her holding Avery. Another featured her next to the cake, cropped to cut me out entirely. The caption underneath read, "Celebrating motherhood with grace and gratitude." Grace, gratitude. I felt the bile claw its way up my throat as I scrolled. There was no trace of the fountain, no trace of the screams. No one would ever know what happened unless I told them. And I wasn't ready to speak, not yet. I remembered a moment from earlier that day, before everything imploded. I was near the drinks table, adjusting Avery's bottle, when a woman I recognized from the community board meetings walked up with a kind smile. "You're Taryn's assistant, right?" she asked. "She's the mom, yes?" I froze. The plastic bottle in my hand bent under my grip. Before I could answer, Taryn strolled by, laughing at something behind her, and rested her manicured hand on the woman's shoulder. She heard. She knew. And she said nothing. She just smiled. The woman beamed back. "Such a beautiful baby. Taryn must be thrilled." I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because I didn't have the strength to correct her. That moment hit harder than the cake, harder than the water. Because it wasn't just erasure, it was replacement. Casual, socially accepted. No one questioned it. The planner had also mistaken her for Avery's mother during setup. I remembered the way she had looked at me with confusion when I asked about the layout. I wasn't wearing the Mama Glow outfit after all. Taryn's dress was pale pink, flowing, with custom gold embroidery that read "Glow Goddess" across the bodice. Avery's headband matched. Taryn had even taken photos with the florist before guests arrived, posing with the baby like she was starring in a magazine shoot. It wasn't random, it was orchestrated, and I had walked right into it, holding my daughter, thinking I was the mother in the story. But Taryn wasn't just cruel. She was curated, strategic. Every detail from the color palette to the seating chart to the lighting had been designed to showcase her, to blur me out. And it had worked. Scrolling through the online album later, I realized I appeared in exactly 2 pictures. One was a blurry background figure behind the dessert table. The other was a side angle where my face was partially hidden by someone's shoulder. Meanwhile, Taryn was in every frame, holding Avery, accepting gifts, kissing cheeks. I stared at one particular photo for a long time. It was her next to the cake, arms wrapped gently around my daughter, head tilted in a perfect profile. It looked exactly how motherhood was supposed to look. Warm, whole, beloved. Except it wasn't real. She wanted the title without the work, the image without the sacrifice. She wanted the light of something she never carried. You wanted to be the mother so badly. Now I'll show you what it takes to protect a child. I remember the exact pitch of her fork against the rim of the glass. A soft, practiced chime that commanded attention without urgency. Like a school bell signaling the start of another lesson I hadn't asked for. Everyone turned to her. Lenora stood at the head of the garden with her signature rose smile, sugary but never warm. She raised her glass and glanced around the yard like she was taking attendance. I felt the knot in my stomach tighten, the one that had been forming since the day I found out I was pregnant, and realized she wouldn't be celebrating it. I just want to say, she began, that motherhood is a complicated gift. Not every woman is cut out for it, but we all learn to make peace with our family's mistakes. There it was, neatly wrapped in civility, dipped in a tone soft enough to pass for wisdom, and yet it cut sharper than anything else she'd ever said to me. A few guests laughed, those who didn't understand. The rest just clinked their glasses as if they hadn't witnessed the slow execution of someone's dignity. I didn't respond. I held Avery a little closer. She whimpered at the sudden clapping, so I swayed gently, humming something tuneless. No one noticed me. As the noise faded and people returned to their hors d'oeuvres and hollow pleasantries, Lenora walked past where I sat under the awning. She paused just long enough to place a hand on my shoulder. "At least she has your eyes," she said quietly, "if nothing else." I didn't flinch. I didn't thank her. Avery gripped my dress with one hand, and I realized my fingers were pressing into her back just a little too tightly. I forced them to relax. Minutes later, they opened the gift table. Everything was color-coded and labeled like a bridal registry. My name was buried near the bottom of the pile. I peeled the wrapping paper away slowly, even though I already sensed what was coming. Inside the box, a single baby bottle and a post-it stuck to the lid. In case it happens again, maybe wait for the ring next time. I didn't laugh. I didn't cry. I didn't say a word. I looked up and saw my mother across the lawn, swirling her wine glass, chatting with someone about floral arrangements. Taryn stood beside her, dramatically reenacting the cake reveal for a new group of guests. She mimed my reaction, gasped, laughed. Her hands painted me into a caricature of overreaction. I set the bottle back in the box and closed the lid. No one saw. No one needed to. Because at some point, when the world insists loudly enough that you're less than, you start measuring your worth in silence. And silence, I've learned, can be deafening when it's earned. That night, I laid Avery down in her crib and sat on the floor of the hallway just outside her door. I didn't go to the bedroom. I didn't wash my face. I just sat, palms flat against the cool floorboards, heart too loud in the quiet. I didn't cry because I was hurt. I didn't cry because they were wrong. I cried because I was finally ready to be done trying. If this is what they called family, I'd rather raise mine in silence. The notification came in just after midnight. I had been sitting on the edge of my bed, rocking slightly, not quite ready to sleep. Avery was breathing softly in her crib, the white noise machine humming like a lie I was trying to believe in. I glanced at my phone, expecting some work spam or an app update. Instead, I saw it. Savannah Society baby shower goes off script. It was trending. I clicked instinctively, even though I already knew. Knew in the way your body tenses before the bad part of a story you've already lived. The blog post was perfectly packaged. Soft tone, pseudo-empathetic language. Just enough plausible deniability to make it feel like journalism instead of what it really was. Character assassination? Photos of the party, carefully chosen. Taryn, glowing in pink, holding Avery. Guests toasting, candles flickering. Not a single frame of the cake's message, not one mention of the fountain, not one breath about the panic that came after. And then the line that hit harder than any edit could. The father remains unknown. I didn't move, not at first. Then slowly I scrolled to the comments. I knew I shouldn't have, but I did. Speculation, laughter, moral judgments in bullet points. One person wrote, "Typical attention grab, probably faked the whole thing for sympathy." Another replied, "If she didn't want to be judged, maybe don't throw a party with no ring and no answers." My laptop sat across the room. I got up, opened it, pulled up the post again. My hands trembled as I took screenshots, one by one, not stopping until every word was preserved. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I saved everything into a new folder I labeled Custody and Defamation. I sat back down. I exhaled like I'd been underwater. And then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text. "Taryn, silence always has a cost, just making sure you know." She didn't even pretend anymore. I stared at the message, then forwarded it to someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Emily, my college roommate turned attorney. No pleasantries, no explanation, just 2 files and a subject line. Need to talk. I stared at the ceiling as the room began to tilt, not from shock but from clarity. You wanted me quiet, but you forgot. I was raised by the same woman who taught you how to smile while twisting the knife. You're not the only one who learned. By morning, Emily had replied. Got it. Let's talk strategy. I started another folder, named it Proof of Pattern. Dragged in screenshots, video links, the cake photo, the quote from the blog, the text from Taryn, and then I opened a blank note, typed just one sentence. This isn't about me anymore. I hit save. Taryn had made her move. She'd taken our private war public. Now she was about to find out what it felt like when the spotlight wasn't hers alone. It came from Olivia, my coworker, the one person at the office who still checked in without sounding like she was obligated to. The message was simple. Thought you should see this. Attached was a screenshot of a Reddit thread with the title, Local Drama, Unstable Mom at High Society Baby Shower. The user posting it claimed to be a family friend, claimed they had watched her spiral for years, said I had episodes, that Avery wasn't safe with me, that it was only a matter of time. The comments multiplied like rot. She sounds dangerous. Where's CPS when you need them? Another mom cracking under pressure. Shouldn't have kept the baby. I couldn't breathe for a second. Not because I was afraid it was true, but because I knew exactly who wrote it. Not just because of the phrasing, not just because of the timeline, but because Taryn always needed to do her damage from a distance, behind clean white gloves. I forwarded the image to myself and added it to the folder on my desktop, now labeled Custody and Reputation Phase 2. Later that day, Colton knocked gently on the bedroom door. He had that look on his face, firm jaw, careful steps, like he was carrying something breakable. I got something, he said. You should see it. He handed me his phone. The screen showed a text, unsaved number, but the message was clear. If you really love Avery, you need to think long-term. That baby deserves a stable home, away from her. I handed the phone back without blinking. Was that her? He asked. I nodded. And for the first time since this began, I didn't feel like breaking. I felt ready. This wasn't about embarrassment anymore. This wasn't about being erased from a slideshow or laughed at over frosting. This was about someone trying to unwrite the bond between me and my daughter. And I wasn't going to let her. That night, after Avery fell asleep, I dug out a folder I hadn't touched in years. It was full of contracts, financial papers, old emails, the kind of stuff I kept out of habit more than hope. Tucked in the back was an email chain from Taryn, 5 years ago. She had begged me for a loan to cover her failing boutique account. I'll pay you back, I swear. You owe me after everything I've kept quiet about. I remembered how scared I was back then, how small, how much I just wanted her to like me. I copied every file, every message, every detail. I labeled it all. I organized timelines, dates, names. This wasn't a reaction anymore. This was a strategy. I sent Emily, my lawyer, a text with no preamble. "I'm ready," she replied in under a minute. "So am I. Let's hit them where it hurts." I stared at the screen for a while, then flipped the laptop closed and looked out the window. The night outside was quiet. For now. Taryn had spent her life perfecting her reflection, building an image so pristine that even she forgot it wasn't real. I had spent mine trying not to crack the mirror, but I wasn't her reflection anymore. I was the wall she was finally going to run into. The envelope was beige, unmarked, heavy. It sat on my desk at work like it had been waiting for me longer than I'd been employed there. My name written in a tight script, no return address. But the second I opened it, I recognized the voice behind the words. It was a formal complaint, anonymous of course, suggesting I might be mentally unfit to continue in my position due to behavioral instability post-childbirth. They used the words kindly, like concern, like caution. But I knew better. I knew the language. It was Lenora's formality stitched together with Taryn's venom, polished cruelty, weaponized tone. HR called me in that afternoon. They said they were required to follow up, that this was just a wellness check, that they weren't accusing me of anything. I smiled. I answered every question. I kept my voice steady, my eyes clear. I played their game like I'd practiced it. But inside, I was laying bricks. That evening, an email came through from the Department of Family Services. Someone had filed a concern regarding Avery's safety at home. They were requesting documentation, a meeting, a full review of my childcare environment. I stared at the screen for a long time, then got up and walked to the window. The sun was setting behind the neighbor's fence, orange leaking into lavender. And in that silence, I heard it. My mother's voice, from years ago. Everything we do stays inside the house. Not anymore. They didn't just come for my reputation. They came for my child. I opened my laptop and began building a new timeline, connecting every date, every escalation, the article, the texts, the envelope, and now this. I wasn't afraid anymore. Later that week, a link began to spread. Someone sent it to me anonymously. 12 seconds. That's all it was. 12 seconds of me in my backyard, reaching out toward Avery with raised hands and a voice they had slowed down and amplified, distorted to sound like I was screaming. It wasn't real. I had been catching her from falling off the garden bench. She'd tripped. I'd shouted her name. That was it. But online it was titled, "Is she okay to be raising a child?" Comments piled up. Shares climbed. People judged from couches and kitchens, strangers turning my mothering into theater. I didn't comment. I didn't defend. I saved the link. Then I called Emily. "I'm ready to post," I said. "Do it." So I sat down at my desk, turned on the camera, and began recording. No makeup, no edits, no anger, just me. I spoke plainly, described the fountain, the cake, the silence, the laughter. I showed the real video, raw and uncut, of the moment Avery fell and I caught her. I ended with a line I didn't rehearse. "You made your version go viral. Now it's my turn." The courtroom was colder than I imagined, not physically, just in energy, like a space designed to strip the heat from everyone inside. I sat on the left, Emily beside me. Avery wasn't here. She was with Colton, probably playing with that elephant rattle she chews when she's nervous. I wished I had something that simple to hold on to. Across from me, Lenora sat in a steel gray suit, hair pulled back so tight it looked like a challenge. Taryn was next to her, fidgeting, glancing at her phone every few minutes like she could scroll her way out of this. The judge looked up from the papers and asked the question that sucked the air out of the room. "What motivated your campaign against your sister?" No one moved. Taryn blinked, looked at the judge, then at me. Then, finally, at our mother. Lenora didn't look back. Taryn started, voice cracking like a bad radio signal. "I didn't want to hurt her. I was following direction." The judge raised an eyebrow. Taryn swallowed. "She told me to do it. Everything. The stories, the fake comments, the photos, the video. She said Maura never belonged. That she wasn't like us." It didn't feel like vindication. Not yet. It felt like silence cracking open. There was a ripple of gasps. A pen dropped to the floor. I didn't turn to see who it belonged to. Lenora's jaw didn't move at first. Her face flushed, then drained of color. "I see," the judge said. "Mrs. Greer, do you wish to respond?" She did. Lenora stood slowly like a queen choosing the moment to step down. She turned not to the judge, but to me. "Maybe now you understand," she said, voice sharp and steady. "You were never strong enough. You've always been this needy little wound. Everyone left because you pushed them away. I just stopped pretending first." I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I stood, adjusted my blazer. "No," I said quietly. "They left because you taught them I wasn't worth staying for." Silence. Not dramatic, not loud. Just stillness. Like the moment before a storm decides whether it's going to break or disappear. The judge called for a short recess. People began to shift, whisper. Taryn sat frozen, hands in her lap. Lenora lowered herself into the chair like someone had finally cut the strings. Outside, the sun was waiting. I walked out through the lobby, ignoring the questions from reporters and the clicking cameras. I held Avery's blanket in one hand, though she wasn't in it, just something to hold. I didn't look back. They lost their power the moment I stopped asking to be seen. I wasn't walking away from them. I was walking toward myself. It came from a former coworker I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. Her message was short, just a single line. "Are you okay?" Attached was a link. I clicked. A TikTok video titled, "When a Single Mom Snaps" had over 300,000 views. I recognized the footage immediately. My backyard, me holding Avery, crying. The video cut mid-moment, ending before I'd even calmed her down. Music had been added, slow, eerie piano. The caption read, "This child deserves better." I sat completely still, not frozen in fear, but in recognition. Taryn had filmed me, again, or at least paid someone to. I didn't panic. I didn't scream. I saved the video to my folder, then locked my phone and placed it face down. They had fired their last shot, and it had missed. The post made its rounds online, of course. Some people judged, some defended. A few said I looked tired. Others wrote full essays on motherhood and responsibility. But none of them knew me. None of them had been there for the late-night feedings, the ear infections, the days I worked from the floor with Avery curled up on my chest. I recorded my own video. No edits, no filters, no script. "You filmed a mother having a moment," I said. "Here's who I really am." Then I showed the whole clip, unedited, Avery tripping, me catching her crying, and me crying with her, because sometimes that's all you can do. The video ended with Avery laughing in my arms. It didn't go viral, but it reached the people it needed to. Days passed. I took Avery to the park. We sat on a bench far from the main path. I watched other mothers chase toddlers, push swings, wipe faces. No one recognized me. No one whispered. No one stared. And I let myself breathe in that anonymity like it was medicine. I thought about therapy, about grace, about not needing forgiveness from people who never intended to give it. I used to crave closure. Now I crave peace. An email came through while Avery napped. It was from a real estate lawyer. My mother had finally sold the boutique. No subject line, no message, just the formal transfer paperwork attached. I deleted it. There was nothing left to say. That night, I rocked Avery in the nursery. The moonlight fell through the blinds in strips across her tiny face. She was drifting off, thumb in her mouth, hand curled around mine. "Your name means strength," I whispered. "You gave it to me before you even spoke." They tried to define me. But you, my girl, you let me define myself. There's a kind of freedom that comes when you stop begging to be understood, when you let go of needing the people who broke you to be the ones who fix you. I used to think strength meant staying quiet, holding everything in, proving I could handle it. Now I know, real strength is knowing when to walk away, when to protect your peace at all costs, especially for the ones who depend on you. Have you ever had to let go of someone you thought you couldn't live without, just to finally live? I'd love to hear your story. Tell me in the comments, what was your moment of reclaiming yourself? If this story spoke to you, drop a 1 in the comments or share what city you're watching from. I'd love to connect. And hey, if you're new here and this video hit home, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story. There's more where this came from. Your voice matters. Let's heal, one story at a time.